How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, July 16th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile for Tyreek Hill. The elite wide receiver for the now Miami Dolphins is 28, and originally when I made this episode, I had to delete a good amount of my audio to save space, and one of the episodes that got deleted was the Tyreek Hill episode that I made from then. So I am going to make an updated version that is, of course, consistent with this date. But of course, with this episode, I'm going to give you an idea of Tyreek Hill's path to where he is right now. Because, of course, he hasn't taken the traditional route to get to where he is right now. Ever since he's gotten to the NFL, it's pretty much been smooth sailing, but he's pretty much had quite a bumpy ride to get to the NFL itself. But considering where he is right now, he leaves the Chiefs and joins the Dolphins as a Super Bowl champ, a player who's been named a Pro Bowler the last 6 seasons. He's been named to the first team All-Pro in 3 of those seasons. Just to give you a sense of who he is, he was a return specialist when he first came in. He's one of the most impressive athletes that the NFL's ever seen. He was a gold medal winner for representing the United States at the World Junior Championships as a track star. He was able to translate it into an amazing NFL career, as he has been able to produce for NFL teams at an amazing rate. And of course, winning a Super Bowl as one of the main players is, of course, no feat to scoff at. But I digress. Getting into who he is as a player, he stands at about 5'10". He's 185 pounds. And of course, other than his speed, he is incredibly shifty. And he does use his speed, and he does use his bowling ball build to his advantage as a football player. And I do think he is one of the marquee athletes that defines this era of NFL football. So going into his background, originally coming out of Douglas, Georgia, he would go on to play at Garden City Community College in Kansas. He would go on to run track and play football. Then he would go on to get recruited to play football at Oklahoma State. He would go on to play only 1 season at Oklahoma State, and in that season, he would go on to be, of course, the Big 12 Offensive Newcomer of the Year. In his junior season, he would go on to finish with 534 rushing yards, 281 receiving yards. So he had 815 total yards of offense and 2 touchdowns, as he did have 2 kick return touchdowns and a punt return touchdown. So he was an all-around force that season that he did play on that level. However, because of a domestic violence arrest, he would get dismissed from the Oklahoma State program. He would go on and play at West Alabama and establish himself as a good enough prospect to be taken in the 2016 NFL draft. In the draft, that would see Jared Goff be taken as the first pick overall, and would see the first wide receiver overall be Corey Coleman out of Baylor, taken with the 15th pick by the Cleveland Browns. This was a season that would see no wide receivers taken in the first round, by the way. But Tyreek Hill will be taken with the 165th overall pick in the 5th round by the Kansas City Chiefs, as he was a member of the Kansas City Chiefs for every season in his career up until now, which so far is the first 6 years of his career. His rookie season with Kansas City would be his age 22 season in 2016. His rookie season would see him start one of the 16 games he played for a Kansas City Chiefs team that went 12-4. They would go on to win one more game than the prior year, as they would win the AFC West for the first time since 2010. In that season, Tyreek Hill would, of course, do it all. He would go on to be named a Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro as a returner. That season, he would go on to finish with 2 punt return touchdowns and his lone kick return touchdown of his career. As an offensive weapon, as a wide receiver, he had 61 receptions for 593 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he would go on to finish with 9 total touchdowns on the year for Kansas City, as 2016 was when Alex Smith was running the offense. However, by the end of that year, after being named a Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro player in his rookie season, the Kansas City Chiefs would end up losing in the divisional round to the Steelers. That year, the team that would make it out of the AFC would be the New England Patriots, as this was the year where the Patriots beat the Falcons in overtime after overcoming a 2-3 deficit. But following this would lead to Tyreek Hill's second season with the Kansas City Chiefs. This season, he would be a starter at wide receiver. He would start 13 of the 15 games he played in a second season in 2017, in a season in which the Kansas City Chiefs went 10-6. They would win 2 less games than the prior year. This was the year in which Patrick Mahomes would take over the starting reins mid-season. In this season, Tyreek Hill would go on to finish with, looking at how he fared as a return specialist, he did finish with 1 punt return touchdown on the year. On the offensive side, he would be named a Pro Bowler as a wide receiver this year, as he finished with 75 receptions for 1,183 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. This would be the first time that he would eclipse 1,000 receiving yards in a season, and let it be his second season in the league. And that was, of course, the first season where he really started to hook up with Patrick Mahomes, where people started to see the result of seeing a player with a controlled, strong arm and a player with a controlled speed that defenses can't control. But of course, following that 2017 season, that would see Tyreek Hill be named a Pro Bowler for his second year in a row. The Chiefs would end up losing in the wild card round to the Tennessee Titans, as this year the Patriots would make it out of the AFC for the second year in a row. This time they would end up losing to the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 52 in Minneapolis. Following this Super Bowl, this would lead to Tyreek Hill's third season with the Kansas City Chiefs. The very first season, he was a first-team All-Pro player as a wide receiver. In his age 24 season in 2018, he would start all 16 of the games he played in a season in which the Chiefs would go 12-4. They would win the AFC West for the third year in a row, as well as, that would be his third year there. This is the season in which Patrick Mahomes would be a starter for the first full year of his career. He was named the offensive player and the MVP. And of course, alongside Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill was one of the main recipients of Patrick Mahomes' MVP season. In year 3, Tyreek Hill would finish with 87 receptions for 1,479 yards. That is the most receiving yards that he's ever put together in a season, as he would also finish with 12 receiving touchdowns. Taking a look at how he fared as a return specialist, he would return his last punt return to date in 2018. But that would, of course, add on to the 13 touchdowns. And he would go on to finish with a rushing touchdown, as well as he added 151 yards of offense. He would finish with 1,630 total yards from scrimmage, finishing with over 100 yards per scrimmage average over those 16 games that he played, as he had 13 total yards from scrimmage, at least on the offensive side, not to mention his additional returning touchdown. In addition to being named a Pro Bowler for the third time in his career, he was named a first-team All-Pro wide receiver. And after being named a first-team All-Pro return specialist, this is the second time. Like I said, very big feat to do it in 2 different positions. And following the regular season, the Chiefs would end up beating the Colts in the divisional playoffs. This would be the first time that at least Mahomes and Tyreek Hill won a playoff game. In the AFC Championship, they would end up losing to the Patriots off of a coin flip and then a Patriots drive that would lead to a touchdown in overtime. Following that, the Chiefs would end up beating the Rams by 10 in Super Bowl 53 in Mercedes-Benz. But following that would lead into Tyreek Hill's 4th season with the Chiefs, the season that would win him the championship. In his age 25 season in 2019, Tyreek Hill would start all 12 of the games he played for a Kansas City Chiefs team that went 12-4. They would win the AFC West for the 4th year in a row, as this was the 5th year in a row they made the playoffs under Andy Reid in his 7th season, making the playoffs for the 6th time in that span. In that 2019 season, Tyreek Hill would not finish with a return touchdown for the first season in his career, as of course he did come in as a return specialist. He would, however, be named a Pro Bowler in 2019, as in that season he would go on to finish with 58 receptions for 860 yards. He had 7 receiving touchdowns, as he did go on to miss what would effectively be a month of the season, because he was suspended a month from team activities as a result of a child abuse investigation. But following missing 4 games, he was still able to make the Pro Bowl for the 4th time in his first 4 seasons in the league. Once the Chiefs would ease their way into the playoffs, they would end up beating the Houston Texans 51-31 after they were down by a pretty sizable amount at one point and famously came back. In the AFC Championship, they would end up beating the Titans 35-24. And immediately after that AFC Championship win, they would go on to Miami to beat the San Francisco 49ers 31-20 in Super Bowl. In that Super Bowl, Super Bowl 54, Tyreek Hill would finish with 9 receptions for 105 yards on the day, as he was the Chiefs' leading receiver. And one of the big parts that would help the Kansas City Chiefs win their very first championship since 1969, ending a 50-year drought. As of course, this was a season in which Tyreek Hill will go on to win a Pro Bowl, so it's not like he wasn't just like a dude on the team. But following his championship season, like the Chiefs have not won a championship since the 2019 season, and neither is Tyreek Hill. Following his lone 2019 championship season, he would return to Kansas City for his 5th season there. In his age 26 season in 2020, he would go on to start all 15 of the games he played in a season in which the Chiefs would go 14-2. Their 14-2 record would be the very best record that the Chiefs have put up in their franchise's regular season history. It would take him all the way back to the Pro Bowl, but before that, Tyreek Hill would go on to be named to the Pro Bowl for his first 5 years of his career. To do that for half a decade straight, is more than impressive. He would go on to be named a first-team All-Pro wide receiver for the 2nd time in a 3-year stretch. He was named to the NFL's first-team All-Pro for the 3rd time in his first 5 years. He would go on to be named, alongside all that, he would go on to finish with 87 receptions on the year, as he would finish with 1,276 yards, the second most receiving yards he's had in a year. He would go on to finish with a career-high 15 receiving touchdowns in the 15 games he played, averaging a receiving touchdown a game. Not to mention that he did add 123 rushing yards for 2 touchdowns. So he did combine for nearly 1,400 yards from scrimmage, as he had 17 touchdowns from scrimmage, which is more touchdowns than games played on the year. He was very crucial to Kansas City making it to the playoffs and really easing their way through a regular season, because it's not like they play a very easy division. In the 2020 playoffs, they would end up beating the Cleveland Browns 22-17. They would go on to the AFC Championship game, where they would beat the Buffalo Bills by 2 touchdowns. They would go to Super Bowl 55, where they would end up beating the Buccaneers 31-9. In this game, it looks as though Tyreek Hill was the Kansas City Chiefs' second leading receiver, as he would go on and finish with 73 yards on his 7 receptions for the game. But of course, the Chiefs would not be in that Super Bowl situation if not for Tyreek Hill. So of course, his value is of course understood by them being in that championship game in the first place. But following that 5th season in Kansas City, this would lead to his 6th and final full season with the Chiefs. In Tyreek Hill's age 27 season in 2021, he would start 16 of the 17 games he played for a Chiefs team that went 12-5 in the NFL's first season, in which teams would have to play 17 games. Even though they would play 3 more games, they had won 2 less games than the year before, but they would go on to win the AFC West for the 6 years in a row, and that is the last full season the Chiefs have put up to date. They are still holding on to that streak. Tyreek Hill would finish finished with a career-high 111 receptions for 1,239 receiving yards and 9 receiving touchdowns. This would be the first time in his career he would eclipse 100 receptions on the season. His 1,239 receiving yards would be the fourth time in a 5-year stretch that he had over 1,000 receiving yards in a season. He would go on to finish with at least 9 touchdowns. That'll be the third time that he's hit that many receiving yards in a season. Not to mention he rushed for just under 100 yards on the year, so that put him at 1,335 yards from scrimmage. He would go on to be named a Pro Bowler for the 6th year in a row, in his 6th year in the league, which people in the NFL don't do. Tyreek Hill is literally a walking Pro Bowler. Following that regular season, he would go on to help the Chiefs in the playoffs as they beat the Steelers in the wild card round. They beat the Steelers by 3 touchdowns. In the divisional round, they would end up beating the Bills by a touchdown in overtime. I believe it was his touchdown, but don't take my exact word for it. I think it might have been Kelsey. But they would end up losing in the AFC Championship game to the Cincinnati Bengals by a field goal in overtime as the Chiefs ended up fumbling that opportunity. The Bengals would end up going to the Super Bowl where they lost to the Rams in SoFi by 3 points. But that, of course, leads us to where we are right now. Tyreek Hill going into the season would end up getting traded by the Chiefs to the Dolphins in exchange for a first-round pick from the San Francisco 49ers. So, of course, he would go on after he signed a 4-year, $120 million extension, making him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. And considering he's made a Pro Bowl in every single year he's been in the league, and he's an accomplished junior track star and a Super Bowl champion, I don't think there's much of an argument against Tyreek Hill being an elite wide receiver. But I can't wait to see what the years bring, especially in Miami, now that he's playing with Tua. Thanks for listening to this piece. I do hope all is well. If you ever get a chance to watch Tyreek Hill, they have him right now playing number 10 for the Miami Dolphins at this point. I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank you for your patience. I am going to catch up, but I do want to thank you. This has been a really good summer, and I will slowly get back. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well. Thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you with more as we go on through this, as I go on dropping my March episodes.